Welcome to Decentralized News, our weekly look at all the news affecting the crypto economy. I'm your host, Piter, joined as always by Aussie. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, dude. I'm doing great. Looking happy to do the show despite this pretty red market we've got this morning.
Yeah, markets are down. What's going on? All the news seems so positive, so it's got to be macro, right? We'll get into it all. Let's start with the President Trump executive order. So we have a strict Bitcoin strategic reserve. So they signed an executive order to create this. It starts with a stockpile, just not selling Bitcoin. Interesting. There's been different reports: 112,000 Bitcoin or 200,000 Bitcoin. I guess the difference is what's going to be returned to Bitfinex. Is it a hack or something like that? I don't know if you heard about that.
Yeah,
So
Bitfinex,
there's a
and then
big chunk of it that is going back to, you know, if they can find it.
retail.
Because we had that story from the U.S. Marshal Service last week.
Yeah,
Like, let's see what happens. And that was actually one of the news items that came out of the summit, which wasn't much, but that they're going to audit it and see where it all is and maybe just get their hands around it. So that's good.
make sure
So
it's there.
yeah, let's see what happens with all that. But other interesting things about this executive order, they talked about doing budget neutral ways to acquire more Bitcoin. So it directs the Secretary of Commerce, the Secretary of Treasurer, which is both some, pro Bitcoin, pro crypto guys, to develop budget neutral ways to acquire more Bitcoin specifically. I was fascinated by this. Like, what are budget neutral ways? The stuff I found was like Bitcoin bonds. It really gets complicated when you read into what that is, but dig into it if you like. There's a lot of talk of all these unused properties. Maybe they could sell properties. Maybe they could sell some gold. And there was also one of the strategic reserves, cheese. Maybe they can sell the cheese. Another thing that came up was, oh, maybe Doge savings, and would that qualify as budget neutral? Maybe not because it's savings. I don't know. And then selling alts might be a way. So another part of this executive order is it also established a digital asset stockpile. And it specifically said they're not going to add assets on. They're not going to look for budget neutral ways. And it also kind of explicitly reserves the right to sell these assets. So I thought that was a pretty interesting note, considering the tweet we had earlier in the week: XRP, Sol, ADA, which was later claimed it
Yeah.
was like, oh, those are just top ones in the market cap. That's why he mentioned them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it was weird. And then he had to put out another tweet because there was such a crazy reaction to it. Oh no, I love Bitcoin and ETH. And then he mentioned
Yeah.
ETH, but that's not part of this. I don't know. You even had like Coinbase, Kraken, Binance CEOs who sell all these different altcoins saying like, whoa, it should just be Bitcoin, dude.
Yeah.
What's
Oh,
going on?
dude. It was interesting. It was interesting. That the amount of movement that tweet created was nuts.
Yeah, I think there's all kinds of theories about why they did it, payback donors, that kind of stuff. I don't know. I'm not going to get into all that. But either way, we have a Bitcoin reserve. It's pretty exciting news, but markets, man.
I mean, the thing is they talked about this that bull markets have to climb up a wall of worry, and so when we talk about the other stories in the news, maybe that's kind of the wall of worry that this bull market's trying to climb up. I mean, this is pretty positive news. I mean, it means the U.S. government isn't selling any more Bitcoin. It might still sell
I think
alts.
like one possible like huge catalyst that could save this bull run, because there's like we're below the bull market support band. There's legit talk that the peak was in already. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like
Oh
that
God.
that talk is growing and growing. You know what I mean?
Oh, it is very much growing in many circles that we're in. I just keep seeing stories of people saying, "Oh,
No alt season. It just went straight to meme
Bitcoin,
season, but we're already done.
yeah, everything's done." And I mean, to a certain extent, I think that's a healthy attitude so that you're not like taking on additional risk in this market right now when it might be moving like extraordinary risk. But I also don't think you should be looking at this and saying, I'm selling all my crypto, I'm totally cashing out, I'm done, Bitcoin's a scam, because I mean, we have these dips in the market, these dips happen. And so
I think the
it,
scary thing is if you're heavily into alts and this bull run is over, we never really had an alt season. You never really had a chance to get out. So I think if you're Bitcoin heavy portfolio, maybe you're not sweating it as much. It's still, I mean, God, when you Trump get elected, Republican Congress and Senate is like, oh, $200,000 Bitcoin, no big deal. Let's go.
Yeah.
And now it's like, whew, I mean, we got to get to 90,000 just to get back into like technical bull runs. We got a lot of work to do just to kind of recover a little bit, get back into
Oh, absolutely. This market is definitely throwing everyone for a loop. That is for certain. I
Well,
mean, alts are down 9%, 8% today. Bitcoin's down just over 2 or just under 2. It's
I
wild.
mean, we're not financial advisors, but how are you playing this market right now? How are you dealing with it?
Uh, I'm just sitting on my hands, and I have been for a while. I haven't added capital to the market. I'm sitting on some alts that are down like 90%. Like they're down quite a bit. Some that are down not that much. So
Yeah, it's
I'm just
tempting,
sitting
but
on
it's
my
like, wow, it's going to keep going down while we wait for a bull, an all season that never happens. You know,
yeah.
yeah,
What
it's a
do we
little
do?
bit scary to keep
It
buying. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's it. I couldn't justify keep buying for me right now.
Still
I
buying a little Bitcoin, still DCAing Bitcoin a little bit, but I definitely turned the spigot down. I'm not really touching alts at the moment. It's
Yeah.
super tempting because the price is coming down. It's like, oh, but man, keep buying the dip, and the dip keeps dipping. It gets old after a while. Eventually,
Well, that's it. I mean, I was happy with the size of my positions in terms of the amount of tokens I was holding and everything months ago, and like yes, these prices would allow me to lower my DCA and things like that, but you've also got to take into consideration the fact that, you know, only risk what you're willing to lose. And so
gotta be able to
right
sleep
now,
at night. Yeah.
yeah. And so I'm managing my risk accordingly. And I suggest everyone manage their risk like
I
as
heard
they
an
see fit.
interesting idea that basically if we go back and kind of retest in the 70s, even hit a 60 number, that yeah, it's probably over. But if we kind of hang in there, hang in the 80s, for the next little bit here, it could be back on. We'll see.
Yeah, I think mid 70s would make sense, but yeah,
I
if
mean,
we start breaking lower than that, then it starts getting a bit concerning.
well, the other big story was the crypto summit. I mean, to me, not a lot came out of that. They were going to audit, and probably highlights the improved communication between just industry and government in general. But yeah, I mean, it was the funniest meme I saw was live coverage of the crypto summit, and it was the BitConnect guy going like Bitcoin. I thought that was pretty funny, just because it's like, all right. So anything new to report here? Not much. But the news, even coming into that, was really good. So the SEC in the past month, 11 lawsuits it's dropped. Binance, Coinbase, OpenSea, Robinhood, Uniswap, Gemini, Justin Sun, Consensus, Kraken, Yuga Labs, Cumberland, DRW. Never heard of that one. But and then there I saw rumors swirling that XRP one was going to get dropped. So a lot of positive stuff there. Cynthia Loomis has a summit tomorrow. Tuesday of this week. Talking about America's Bitcoin strategy. So still positive. And then we also had this story: the Office of Comptroller and Currency declared national banks are allowed to custody crypto assets. So and then I think there was something about running ETH nodes was a lot of the tweets, but. U.S. regulator overseeing national banks clarified Friday that banks can engage in some crypto activities. They rescinded guidance from Joe Biden, effectively that set guardrails for banks seeking to engage in crypto activities. So they kind of removed that. Also withdrew from a joint statement previously issued from U.S. regulators cautioning banks against engaging in crypto. One such statement warned the sector
Is
prone
prone,
to
yeah.
volatility and said any bank activities will be closely scrutinized. So just like watch out, careful, think twice. So that's kind of been removed. So positive news. This came out the same day as the executive order, or was it the summit?
I think it was
But
the summit. It came out the same day as the summit.
so a little bit of the news on the summit day. So positive, more
Yeah,
positive.
definitely some positive. Like, I mean, realistically, like this is all positive news. If you look at everything that's coming out of the U.S. government, except for maybe macro, it's definitely Like, it's all positive news. So I think that we're we're just in such an interesting place.
Well, I think a lot of
Looking,
the conversation comes around the macro, but let me do a quick update on the state reserve bill since we were talking about the SBRs. So Utah passed a bill, but it ended up being a watered down bill. So this had started off as a strategic reserve, but they took out any buying of Bitcoin, any reserve out of there. But it did get passed. This, I think, just happened this morning. Offers basic protections for mining, running nodes, self custody. It's got to go to the governor, Spencer Cox. It's a Republican, so it still has to. It's not like officially law yet, as far as I can understand it. So he is a Republican. Don't know. Couldn't find much on his Bitcoin stance, but it seems like a good chance that gets passed. Zona, you have two different bills. They have moved on. So there's the Senate and the House. Past the Senate, it's going to go to the House. Going to go through all the committees, all that stuff. So we'll see if it gets through. They have the Strategic Digital Assets Reserve Bill, which would set up a fund for the state treasurer to manage, and then the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve Act, which empowers public funds to be invested directly. So, one allowing it, one setting up the infrastructure. If it gets through, it would go to a Democratic governor, Katie Holmes. So I'm a little skeptical that gets signed into law, even if it makes it passed. But who knows? Probably the most exciting one, though, is Texas, because it did get
yep.
through the House, through the Senate. I'm sorry. So now it's going to go to the House. Then the lieutenant governor came out right after with a positive comments about it, supporting it. And then, so this one's going back to the House, got to go through committees, could get watered down, like, for example, in Utah, could get shot down. But if it makes it through, Greg Abbott is the governor of Texas, and I can't imagine he wouldn't sign it. It's really hard to imagine a situation where he wouldn't. And why is this so exciting is if Texas does do it, if you put it in perspective of how big of an economy just Texas is, no offense, bigger than Canada, bigger than Russia, though, and Italy as well. So, like, that's just to give an idea of the size. And that would be a nice, big, splashy story.
Oh, it
If
would
it,
be a huge story, especially if Texas is like buying Bitcoin and it's not just a stockpile. That would be a significant purchasing power into Bitcoin. And it at that point you kind of start wondering, like, how much more can this handle? Because, like, can Bitcoin go down if you've got all of this additional buying power from these state reserves, for example, coming into place, especially a state reserve coming from Texas, which is a very large economy.
well, I mean, maybe that's part of the problem is it's really just, it's a lot of talk still, even with the SBR that we got from the US government, it's super exciting, but there's no announcement on, we're not buying anything yet. We're just like, okay, we'll keep it and we'll look, see if we still have it. I mean, in the end, that's the rubber that's on the road. We don't have any purchases yet. So, but I mean, I do believe this Texas one does allow, I don't know, I got to read into it a little more, but I think it does. All right. So why are the
No,
market? Yeah.
I
Go ahead.
think it does from what
Yeah.
I read in the
But
uh
DYOR.
yeah.
So why are the markets down? I mean, seems to be macro, right? The S&P is down. It's given up all its gains since the inauguration of Trump. Bitcoin is about the same. It's not quite as bad as the S&P in terms of compared to Trump's inauguration, but I think a lot of it has to swirl around him a little bit. So what's so weak? I mean, we're all this uncertainty around the trade wars. I mean, it's coming kind of hot and heavy. Like, what does it mean? Markets don't like uncertainty. We're gonna
What are they going to do? Like,
like from
what's the
projections from
impact?
GDP got like reduced into the negative. So we're like, we're going to hit a recession, like what's going on? And then you have kind of Doge, and like I say, it came in hot, and it's causing a lot of friction. You know what I mean? So like, what happens with all that? Kind of like the bureaucratic wars. Like, you're fighting back, and what does it mean? And you're gonna have countries fighting against it. You're gonna have your own internals fighting against you. Like, how does this play out? And is it going to be good for the economy? I think there's a lot of uncertainty there. And then you got the Fed. Where they're not cutting rates. We went pretty high. It's cut a couple times, but basically it's been flat ever since. There's not a lot of excitement about a bunch of rate cuts, and we're still in quantitative tightening. So is that going to end? So until that does, or we see some change in projections, it's hard to get too excited. What's the old saying? Follow the Fed.
Yeah, I mean, the Fed right now is there's the meeting in 8 days, and the Fed meeting, like, projections suggest 95% chance of no change. no cuts. There's a 5% chance that they might cut this meeting. But then you've got a month, over a month where there's no meeting. And then it starts getting a bit more hopeful. Like May is like a 50 right now, looking like a 50-50 shot on whether they do make a cut. And that has been climbing up over the last kind of couple of weeks. Like last month, we've really seen May start being a date that they're considering. It was originally 75-25. It's now 50-50. So maybe the markets are starting to see some possible chances that we see a some cuts coming. And June's really where it seems almost guaranteed, where it's 90% expecting a cut and only 10% not. So if you're looking for some relief on the macro picture, you're looking June in terms of when we might see relief. And
Well, we get CPI this Wednesday, so we'll be watching that. Like we want to see that coming down so that they can afford to cut rates. I don't know if you follow Trueflation. I guess that's at like 1.4%, but it's kind of a young statistic. It's not necessarily something to take to the bank, but it's at least a hopeful sign that maybe the numbers will be better than expected.
yeah, Trueflation, like a lot of people have referenced Trueflation
Just because
and
it's so low,
how,
it's just 1.4%. It's like, huh.
yeah, Trueflation's much lower than what CPI is measuring. CPI is measuring right now about a 3% year over year. And current projections for this Wednesday suggest that CPI should come in at 2.9% year over year, so down 0.1%. And the same thing with core at 3.2, down from 3.3. The monthly numbers expected to come down as well compared to last month, but it'll be interesting to see with where all that shift comes. Well, it'll be interesting to see too because there's job openings data that's coming out on Tuesday. The
Well, we
previous
just got some
reporting's been
unemployment on Friday. It was like a little bit up, which is kind of what you want to see. Inflation going down and unemployment going up. Like that's like, but like not a lot. It's basically
yeah.
flat. It's a
Well,
little
that's
bit.
it. So we've got job openings. So if job openings are also coming down, and then unemployment ticks up, and then inflation ticks down, then you're kind of creating the perfect macro scenario for the Fed to say, okay, yeah, we'll cut rates in May, because I like cutting
Uh,
rates in March doesn't seem like it's going to happen.
it's been pretty accurate when we get this close. I mean, we do get what we do get CPI before, so
We get
that number
PPI as well,
that number
and
could change. But yeah, coming this close, it would be.
it would be a pretty major shock. And looking even at like the date, any other data that they might get before the meeting, there's just it's probably too close to the meeting to be getting this data for them to be saying yes down, like yes cut rates or no cut rates. They'll probably, especially considering that last month's data was a tick up, they're probably going to be wanting to say, okay, we need 1 or 2 months or 3 months of it ticking down before we really make that decision. And so they'll, at the very least, if we get this tick down and then we get a tick down in April, that gives them a good chance in May to suggest rate cuts at the very least. So
Well, it seems like we're certainly in a window of worry for what's going to happen with the markets, but it's not all bad in terms of the macro. I mean, there was some talk of quantitative tightening ending 6 months into the year in some Fed comments, and then also on the macro level, people have been pointing to this growth in global liquidity and that there's like a 2 to 3 month lag with risk assets, particularly Bitcoin. So there are some signs of hope, and these kind of dates sort of line up. There was some excitement about maybe, tax season ending, maybe some of these refunds coming back from, what was it, FTX. But that was what, mid this month? January, February.
it started. It would have. We should start seeing refunds starting going out probably in the next week or
That hasn't
so.
really materialized, kind of. And like the whole tax thing is supposed to be kind of happening right now, too, right? Like,
Oh, absolutely.
and that's not really materializing. So the only thing's kind of to pin your hopes on a little bit is
Oh,
the Fed.
yeah. The Fed. I mean, FTX. I always thought FTX was going to be more of a a dribble than like a stream. And so realistically, the FTX should start paying out probably in the next week or so. So that we'll see what that starts doing. I'm also interested to see, like, do we see some other moves happening where, I don't know, do with not only FTX, but maybe we start seeing some words like, you know, there's some rumors about ETFs. Solana's got their next approval deadline for potential ETF tomorrow on the 11th. There's been some rumors about a potential SUI ETF filing, so that's kind of interesting news as well.
I mean, in terms of looking for catalysts for an alt season, after macro improves, there may be some, some positive news coming from these
Yeah,
angles.
absolutely. And I mean, we're also seeing kind of just other things happen in the space that will allow it to kind of mature. So if you think about Sol, just for example, they've been pretty limited in terms of like what stable coins you can access on the network. More or less it's USDC, maybe a little bit of USDT, but like compared to ETH where you had Frax, DAI, USDC, USDT, there was a lot more options. It's starting to mature. Frax Finance is going to be launching and expanding their stablecoin to Sol soon. So, you know, more stablecoin options, more diversification.
Yeah,
MetaMask,
Soul looks pretty set up, if there is an alt season.
yeah, Sol seems to be getting a solid foundation built for it. A lot more support coming. A lot of things kind of working its way, but on the ETH side too, MetaMask has announced a major like user experience upgrade and in like incorporating native support for Sol and Bitcoin. So really kind of not only making MetaMask easier to use, but more support. So hopefully should be bringing some more support to ETH, and has just activated the Pectra upgrade on the Sepolia test network. So they're getting ready for kind of their next upgrade, which should include some more gas optimizations and a whole bunch of other things. So that's kind of the last kind of interesting news, and I think could be a big catalyst and fuel this market is Coinbase is looking at releasing a tokenized version of their coin stock. So they're looking at kind of bringing their part of their stock on chain. And so if we start seeing, corporate adoption of Bitcoin and crypto tech, that could fuel like a whole new wave of transactions and a whole new wave of kind of liquidity. Because if you think about these tokenized stocks, what if you're a stock trader and you want to be able to trade after hours? You'll now be able to trade the coin stock after hours like anybody else, like a lot of the private big equity firms do after hours. And so
I don't
that
know, makes me fantasize, but like, okay, so if you're going to trade after hours, does that mean you have to have like an asset that trades at all times? Does that mean it's going to be like connected to BTC or something?
I don't know. I mean, USDC trades at all hours, so
Fair,
you
yeah.
you could just pair it with USDC and like, but if you're tokenizing your stock, you got to bring it on chain. That means you've probably have to create a liquidity pool for it, so pairing it with USDC, which increases liquidity, and then
I mean,
you're
gas fees involved somewhere.
yeah, that's it. There's gas fees involved somewhere, which means funds going into ETH, which means
Expanding
validators are earn
networks.
yeah, expanding networks, money going into all of those things. And so you start seeing that network effect of okay, there's more transactions because of this one thing, which now is starting to potentially spread wealth into many other places. And if the tokenization of the Coinbase stock drives some, TradFi investors into blockchain so that they can trade Coinbase stocks after hours, then that could bring
But
additional users and liquidity as well.
they might be more likely to trade meme coins.
Meme coins or other cryptos. Like I think that
Yeah.
there's a very possible scenario of how little actions like this all lead to like an alt season, but just like crypto as a whole getting resettled and getting kind of regaining its footing. And you know, prices down. We haven't really been seeing any corporate Bitcoin adoption stories the last kind of 2 weeks, but that's, I mean, we are seeing different forms of corporate adoption, and that's always important too.
Yeah, there have been some, but yeah. One story I wanted to touch on before we go, though. You got Canada, the great northern Canada. I got a new prime minister, and I just wanted to touch on it because, well, how does it affect crypto? And my good friend Aussie. So it's this guy, was it Mark Carney?
Yep.
And when I looked at it, I was like, I'm not positive for crypto, and for Bitcoin. He's like a central bank guy.
Yeah, he is a central banker. He was the head of the Bank of England and the Bank of Canada at various points in his career.
The only comments I can find from him were like control and
He's a
pro
liberal.
CBDC. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll be honest and reiterate a point I think I've made on the show before. Like Canada and crypto is much less political here. Like it's not as major of an election issue as it was in the U.S. Especially this last cycle.
Yeah, probably
And
going forward.
yeah, and probably going forward. And so it wasn't a major focus of any debate. Like I think realistically right now, much like a lot of the market is worried about what the tariffs mean for the US, Canadians are worried about what the tariffs mean for Canadians and the economy in Canada. And so, he came out as the strong candidate with a strong economic background. I don't think Canada's really ever has even started talking about a CBDC. There might have been some early discussions at one point, but I don't think that that's even been a topic that's been delved into. It'll be
I'm just speculating.
interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Central banker, I'm like, oh, they're probably down with it.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see, but I mean,
He's prime
the
minister now. It's different.
I don't know. No, he's not officially prime minister until for another week or so. He became party leader, and then I think the official transition date's the 21st of March. So
It doesn't feel like
it's
a big change though for Canada. Going from Trudeau to him, I don't know though.
so for Canada, this is an interesting piece to discuss, and the conservatives, or so like the Republicans of Canada, would argue this isn't a big change. That Mark Carney is just a reincarnation of what
Mm.
the liberal or then what the Democrats would be in the
Well, it's the
U.S.
same party. That
party.
doesn't seem like. Of course,
Not
they're
it's
going
not a
to.
huge change. Like yeah, they would argue it's not a big change. The reality is it wasn't an election, so it wasn't that there was a big public election on who's going to be the prime minister. This was a
Internal
inter
party.
internal party change. So essentially, it's like when Kamala replaced Joe Biden in terms of as the
But he's not like
candidate.
the VP. He's not like that.
No, he wasn't the VP. So this was like really like an open election.
Right.
He was not like in government at all. Like he wasn't a politician at all prior to his run for leader. He defeated actually the deputy minister, so the deputy prime minister in this campaign. So
Which is like the VP, I'm assuming.
kind of like the VP. It's the second in command, and so he came in as like not a politician. He wasn't, and he won that spot.
So
And
inter-party, it's like, a degree of change, a degree of outsider. Although he's like a central banker, so it's hard to really make that argument too strong.
well, the thing is with central
Or
bankers here, it's like it's not nearly as political as the U.S. So like our central bank, it's not like you're appointed by the Republican Party and you're associated with the Republican Party. Like that isn't, and so like it's much more third party, and so he it's a change, and I do think that it's a significant change from where we were going. There's also he's got a much more like a much stronger economic and fiscal background than kind of what Canada had before. Like Justin Trudeau was, I mean, he was the son of a politician. He
Son
was a
of a
teacher.
summer. Just kidding.
He was a teacher before. He was majorly focused on social issues. And this is now someone with a much more life experience. He's much older than Trudeau was when he was first elected, and he also represents someone that's got a much more a strong fiscal background and much more focused on like the fiscal impacts on Canada. And so it'll be interesting what it means for Bitcoin. I think waits to be seen.
Not much.
Yeah, I don't think it means much for Bitcoin. Canada, we have decent access to crypto. Like it's not like the US where you guys like depending on where you are, you either have no access or a lot of access or kind of somewhere in between. There's general access to crypto in Canada, usually through exchanges, not really through your banks yet, but it's
So I
not.
kind of like watching the different countries' politics just to see kind of which way they're leaning, towards the left or the right, only because it tends to
What
be
that might
more
mean for
pro.
crypto.
Yeah. So it sounds. I mean, we don't have to. We can finish this conversation, but it sounds like it's like slightly back to the center a little bit within the left side. You know what I mean? That's what it feels like to me. But anyway, hope you enjoyed the show. If you like our Canadian political commentary, please do like and subscribe. And as always, do your own research. This is not financial advice. We are not financial advisors. We just do this for fun and for education. Yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, see you guys next week. Thanks for watching. Cheers. And